This week, we're reading Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, otherwise known as Green Slime, a Relatable Meltdown.
Hi, readers. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Katie.
And welcome to Not Another Heroine, Season 2, the podcast where we break down the best and worst fictional heroines of any genre. Because that's what we do now.
Want to see what's next on our TBR list? Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Instagram for a sneak peek at upcoming content or to help us pick our next book.
It feels kind of ominous, but this is our last book.
Oh, I don't like the sound of that. For now.
For now.
Howl's Moving Castle.
Diana Wynne Jones.
Ooh,
look at that.
Wow.
We are going to be doing Howl's Moving Castle in 2 parts, and then our very last episode of the season will be our season closeout, which will coincidentally be our 100th episode. But this is an appropriate book to end on because it has such a, like, the movie has such a wide following. The book is considered like a staple in the genre, in like the fantasy / children's lit world.
Yeah. I also feel like it's so well done. Like, it's a good palate cleanser, like reminder of why you like the genre. I think it kind of speaks to that more so than some of the books that we've read recently.
Zodiac Academy.
I know, yeah, looking at you.
Yeah. But this is definitely younger. So I would caution any readers who are like, oh, I haven't actually read the book. I've only seen the movie. Like, just know what you're going into is really marketed towards, I'd say, 12 to 14.
Yeah.
And like 12 to 14-year-olds from, 40 years ago, where cultural norms were a little bit more conservative.
The little like shorts with knee-high socks and the little bow ties. That's what I'm imagining children reading this.
Yeah. It is very clean, but the plot is fantastic. The characters are very interesting. And we will be covering the book and the movie kind of together in parallel. So we can kind of note where the differences are and see where they got it right.
Yeah. And I will say so I've read the book previously, but I listened to it this iteration. And if you have kids that are aware of the English language, this is a great book to have as an audiobook playing in the background. If you're like, I need some sort of other stimulus, this is a great one because I think it sticks to the story well because there's some that don't translate well to audiobooks. It's clean, and also the narrator for it is pretty good. I think it's similar to the lady that does the voice acting for Sophie in the movie.
Oh, interesting.
If not the same person, they sound very similar.
For all of the readers, we've processed this storyline in 3 different formats.
Yes,
for
we have.
you all.
All kinds of consumption.
It's very fairy tale-esque. Like, I would compare it to like modern authors, Olivia Atwater.
Oh, yeah.
I would say Olivia Atwater is slightly better if you're looking for romance.
Yeah. Because, the romance is a little bit lacking in this,
so
which
if I
makes me sad.
If I have any complaints, and I think that's pretty typical of these older books, is like the romance isn't as strong. But also similar is Patricia C. Reed, which I don't know if you've read. She's kind of like writes in the same time, like also started in the 80s. So the language is similar. And Madeleine L'Engle, who wrote A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh, yeah.
Also very similar. And they're all kind of authors from the same period. So the language might feel a bit dated, I would say, if you're a modern reader or you didn't start reading in that era.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of, this is going to sound crazy metaphor. It reminds me of kind of like those hazy August days when you were a kid on school break and you're like laying in the grass and you're by like dandelions and like the grass is kind of poking you and it's like humid, but there's like clouds in the sky and like the whole day is hazy. Like, that's this book encapsulated in like a feeling, like a very like nostalgic, like warm, like
you just took me down memory lane and I was pleasantly lying in the grass.
That's what this book is.
Thank you.
Same feeling. Yeah. So if you need a palate cleanser, nostalgia, that's this book.
Do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. We start off, I will say this is one of my bigger beefs with Sophie. So Sophie is the oldest of 3 daughters, and she is convinced because she's the oldest that she's not going to be successful in life. And I don't understand where that came from.
Okay, so that is, let me save this book. That is a play on the whole traditional fairy tale-ism where each child had like a predestined role in like folklore mythology. So like it was established, like you see that in some of the old like English folk tales and German fairy tales where like, oh, the youngest is always the prettiest and they're going to do this XYZ. Or if you have seven daughters, the seventh will do this one. So it's not like woe is me, Sophie. It's just like in her world, the eldest daughter is always going to be this way, and the youngest daughter will always be this way.
Okay, because I was like, why the
Don't
fuck does she
hate
have
on my girl Sophie?
I was so confused. I'm like, where did this complex come from? But yeah, so she's a teenager. Her father and her stepmother own a hatter. So she has like one full sister and then one half sister. The youngest sister is super beautiful. The middle sister, no, the other way around?
Yeah, the way around.
Okay, so the youngest sister is like, I'm going to go be a boss bitch. And then the middle one is very pretty and like
vivacious and yeah.
Okay, so yeah, 3 sisters. The father dies, obviously. Sorry.
Couldn't see that one coming. Welcome to fairy tale land.
Yeah. And so the hat business is like doing like kind of okay, but they had a bunch of debt or something. And so the stepmom is like, I got 3 girls. You guys need to learn trades.
I feel so. Her name is Fanny. Is the stepmom. I feel for her. Like,
oh yeah,
she's the most relatable character in this book.
Also, towards the end, when she's just like, I want to be like pretty and rich and just like marry well. It's like, Fanny girl, I feel you. So she's like, okay, all 3 of you are gonna have trades. The youngest one, you are going to go learn to be a magician. And then the middle one, you are going to go learn to be a baker. And then Sophie gal, you are going to come work at the hatter shop. I'll just be your mentor, apprentice, leader. That's not the right word, but apprenticeship.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And then that like kicks off our story. I don't really know what like the first like.
So it's really the establishment of Sophie is like who Sophie is and what like why does everything that happened to her happens. So Sophie's kind of the caretaker of the family. She's the responsible one. And there was an interesting note that part of the reason why they are in so much debt is because the father sent all of his daughters out to these really fancy colleges to get educated.
Oh, I forgot that. Yeah.
So Sophie is thriving in college and she's yanked out of that world to go, be creative and be, a hatter. And another comment here that we learn is that Sophie's actually very creative and she's very talented at making clothes. So she made a dress for her sister and her sister was stunning and got all this attention. And so she has the same kind of skill with hats. So it just naturally makes sense that the daughters are aligned that way. But Sophie feels as she's working on these hats and like drawing in onto herself and just all she's doing is working, she feels herself growing distant from her sisters who are out in the world and growing distant from society because she's just sitting in a dark little room making hats all the time. And then she starts talking to the hats like a crazy woman.
Girl, I feel this so hard. This characterization of Sophie is, I'm a little bit like antisocial introvert at times. Totally speaks to me, but it's also, I like talking to people, but then if you're just like stuck in a room, and I think the one other chick that works in the Hatter is like, she's getting married after May Day and she's just talking about her wedding plans. And Sophie's like, can't really relate to that. But anyways, just talk to my little hats and like, you are gonna, marry rich, honey.
I loved Sophie's magic because this is not something that is used in the movie at all. So in the movie, you'll notice that there is the only person with magic really is the Witch of the Waste and Suleiman and Howl.
Yeah.
Sophie, though, in the book, she talks to these hats and she tells each of the hats that they have their own personality. Like, oh, you're young and sprightly, and oh, you have dimples. And so as these hats get purchased by, various people in the market, strange things start to happen to them. And so she sells she calls it like a mushroom colored hat. And she's like, oh, you're going to marry like rich or something, like despite appearances. And so a very like awkward, quirky woman buys the hat and then Jane. And then she runs off at like town gossip, like a count like came in and swooped Jane off her feet just because she was wearing this mushroom bonnet.
Yep.
And it's basically, we learn that Sophie can like enchant, bring life to inanimate objects as of this part of the story.
It's kind of similar if you guys have read Uprooted by Naomi Novik, the main character in that. She has magic, but it comes in a very like non-traditional way that the other magicians like don't understand. And she's like, I'm just doing it and it happens. I feel like that's Sophie too. Like she doesn't even recognize she has magic really until like the end.
Just Sophie. I'm good at stitching stuff.
Just like talking to my little hats.
Well, and in the background, it's this very quaint, like late 1800s, early 20th century.
I believe you.
Yep. Kind of English village setting in a fantastical land. And so we learn that there's this wizard Howl in a moving castle, and he's like swooping in and stealing young girls' hearts, and like he's the evil wizard in the background, and like, is he stealing their hearts or is he stealing something else? You know what I mean? There's some like adult themes that are hinted at that you would have to like, if you know it, like you're gonna see it.
Wow, I did not.
Eating out their hearts.
Whoa. Wow, yeah.
I mean, maybe we've just read too much fan fiction, but
no, it's there now that you say it.
Yeah. It's definitely like hinted at.
Yeah.
And so there's that. There's also the Witch of the Waste, which is the super evil witch.
The baddie.
Yeah, so everyone avoids her, and even like Howl is scared of her. And so that's basically the setup for Sophie and the land that we're in.
And I think like the first start of events is like Sophie has been kind of isolated for a while because these hats are obviously enchanted. And so it's like drumming up business. But she's really the only person that works at the hat shop because her stepmom goes out to like make purchases, and then they have the one other gal or whatever. And so she has to like continually spend more hours in the hat shop until she's just like in the hat shop all the time. She's like, you know what? I really need to visit my Letty, the baker apprentice. Like, she's just down the street. Like, why can't I just get up the energy to like go and visit her? And like, girl, same. I feel that. And so she eventually like goes out, and she's immediately like overstimulated by all the people because it's May Day.
I was triggered just reading this.
Oh my God, girl, no. You got me fucked up. There's like people everywhere, and everybody's like talking, and she's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I just need to get to the bakery. And then I don't know how she stumbles upon the first guy, but he's like, hey there, do you need help? And she's like, nope, I'm good, everything's fine. And he's like, you're also kind of cute. Like, can I help you? And she's like, no, you can't.
So that's a fun little play. So if you're watching the movie, so she's walking to visit her sister, and there's two soldiers,
the guards,
who like accost her, like, hey, good looking
little mouse or something.
Yeah, hey, little mouse, you wanna go get a cup of tea or something? Like,
no, I'm good, thank you.
So the very first line that the soldiers say to her in the movie is actually a direct quote from the book.
Whoa!
But it's what Howl says to her.
Oh, yeah.
Because the guy who accosts her in the book is Howl. And it's not as like, oh, save the damsel from the soldiers. It's like a Howl being his like rakish
weird
self. Like, hey, honey.
Like, please step away.
Want to come back to my moving castle?
Absolutely not. First of all.
And yeah, so Sophie is like immediately like, step away from me.
I'm good. Thank you. Bye.
And then Howl disappears. So the whole scene from the movie where Howl like carries her up into the air and like delivers her to Cesari's or the bakery.
Oh, the bakeries.
Yeah. It doesn't exist in the book.
Yeah. But it's so well done in the movie that like, I wonder if Diane Wynne Jones like watched the movie and she's like, fuck.
Could have done that. Well, I think they needed to do that in the movie because the romance is more forward and at the front. And if you don't have that established right away that there's a connection between Sophie and Howl, then it looks very arbitrary that like, oh, like,
well, that is true.
After.
Yeah. Oh, and the voice actor, Christian Bale. Sign me.
It can cost me any time.
Preach. But yeah, so she goes to visit the bakery, and then all of a sudden she's like, okay, in very younger sister fashion, they have switched places, and so they have, middle finger up to fate and destiny, and they're like, I actually just want to be married and have 10 kids. And then the other sister is like, I want to be a magician. And so they find a spell that swaps their faces, and then they go to work at their other reverted apprenticeships.
Which there's a lot of messaging, like morality messaging going on here or not, maybe that's not quite the right word, but Sophie, it's quite obvious to an adult reader, not less so if you're younger when you read this, but Sophie feels trapped by her destiny and she falls into that.
Yeah.
The sisters don't feel trapped, and so they embrace what they want to do and they pursue it. Sophie is a victim of her own beliefs. The sisters are successful because they take charge of their own paths.
Well, bloop, bloop, bloop. I feel like I learned a lesson here. Thank you. Wow. When you're listening to books, I feel like you just kind of like pick up a surface level kind of. And I was like, oh, those pesky younger sisters doing naughty things. But that's absolutely like there's deeper messaging there that I just kind of.
Well, the movie does the same thing. And it does it very well. You know how Sophie goes from young to old based on how she's interacting with people. And like the minute she starts drawing into herself and like, no, I can't do it. She turns back into an old woman. It's just symbolism for like how you feel and how you approach life is.
Like embracing your own agency.
Yeah. You're either going to hand it off to destiny or you're going to do it yourself.
Wow. What a good message for like younger girls. Because I feel like it wasn't until like the 75% mark that I like quite obviously was like, whoa, wait a second. Okay, this is about, you know, taking your own actions. Interesting. Yeah. Because that has been missing from some of the romantasy books that that's why this one is like a nice drink of water. Like, oh, I feel refreshed. But during the conversation between the sisters, Sophie, Letty, and Martha. I think it's Martha who's the baker's.
So Martha is working at the baker in the disguise of Letty.
Oh, Jesus.
I know. This is the stuff that doesn't make it into the movie and for good reason.
Yeah, honestly. But the one that's at the bakery, she's like, you're like the stepmom is like taking advantage of you. Like you could do anything. You don't need to be stuck at the hat like place. Like she's living it up with all the money that you're making her. And she's like, well, there's probably like reason for it. And you know, like she deserves to be like happy. And like the sister's like, girl, get your shit together, go live your life, go do something. And Sophie's like, no, well, I'll just like stay at my little hat shop. And then she does stay at the hat shop until the Wicked Witch of the Waste pops up. And I like that Sophie's immediately like, this is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life.
I love it. So Sophie's like intimidated because this woman strolls in and she's like, oh, clearly you have too much money to shop here. Like,
I also love that she's like, I don't have a hat to offer this woman that's fancy enough. Like what a like encapsulation of a character.
And the Witch of the Waste is like looking around. She's like, what a tawdry little hat. And she's upset. And it's not because the quality of the hat. She's like, how dare you try to infringe on my territory? And so he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Please leave the store.
And then I don't really know like what she says, but events happen and then Sophie's cursed into an old person body. But I think there's something different in the book than in the movie, right? Because in the movie, it's very clear. She's like, you were hanging out with Howl. Fuck you, girl. You're an old person.
So it's very much in the book portion. It seems like the Witch of the Waste is cursing Sophie because Sophie dared to work magic in her territory, not because of her connection with Howl.
Yeah.
But because the movie doesn't have Sophie with magic, like that's a non-factor.
Interesting.
And they also completely portrayed the Witch of the Waste differently in the movie.
Yeah.
Because I didn't quite like that because the Witch of the Waste in the book is supposed to be similar to the Queen from ACOTAR, where like eternally beautiful, but like clearly evil.
The like uncanny valley beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like a little bit too cold to be actually beautiful.
It's like the people who've had too much Botox and fillers.
Yeah.
That's that kind of beauty here. And in the movie, she's kind of this overly made up woman in her 50s or 60s who's just like dresses very well, does her makeup very well, but clearly she's feeling age creep up on her.
Yeah. But because it's weird too, because her whole thing is that she like eats people's souls to be young. But it's like, maybe you should have add a couple more in the movie. I don't know what's happening. Yeah. And so it's kind of funny too, because Sophie, she's under the spell and she's immediately like, all right, well, I have been kind of weirdly granted a boon. I'm just going to go out and make my own destiny. I'm going to go out into the world. I'm going to go harass this Witch of the Waste to make me better. But I'm just going to like set out today.
Peace.
No plans, no food.
I love how she's cursed and she's immediately like, well, at least my dress matches.
It's like there are some more important things to be concerned about.
But she's completely unfazed. And I think that's another like mark in the whole, well, if you feel old, you're going to be old.
Yeah, because then you have like the 70 and 80-year-olds who do like Iron Mans. And it's like, okay, you're made of something different.
I was just having dinner with this older woman. We were at a Christmas party and she's like 76 still riding her horses.
Wow.
She's this tiny little woman. She's like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just riding my horses every day. And I'm like,
Jesus.
I was crippled when I went horseback riding for a few hours. So
yeah, that's like the body strength required to, oh my God. Good for her.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's the thing. It's like if you feel old and you think you're old, you're going to be old. And that's the whole curse thing that Sophie is suffering from.
Yeah. She is feeling her age as she walks out into this like foresty heather field or whatever. And then she stumbles upon this like bush that has a dog in it. And I like that Sophie's characterized as being really scared of dogs throughout the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like a reoccurring thing for some reason, because samesies, dogs kind of scare me sometimes. But she sees the dog and he's like snarled in the bush, and she is trying to get like a walking stick that he's also attached to for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
She gets the dog out, the dog disappears. She grabs the like walking stick, but attached to this walking stick is the scarecrow. That's the movie. Never mind, not the book.
This is where it gets weird, because like if you read the book and watch the movie, like with too much space in between, they start to blur together.
Yeah, because it's you know those projector screens from like old school days where you have the two like clear layers,
Yeah,
and then they like kind of like shift slightly. That's exactly what happened. Sorry.
No, it's
no turnip head scarecrow in this scene.
I would only I finished watching the movie this morning, so that's the only way I know it. But there's two entities she meets as she's making her way on her adventure. The first is the dog.
Yeah.
And the dog is attached to a stick that turns out to actually be a useful walking stick. So that's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
But further on, she notices like a scarecrow stuck in a bush.
Oh, okay.
So she rescues the scarecrow, and she's like, "Oh, make your way in the world, Scarecrow." And we know from her magic with the hat, so she can bring life to things. So the Scarecrow's like, "Hi,
here we go."
And Scarecrow follows her, and she's freaked out. So she's
same.
Scarecrows are scary. Like even
with mushy turnip head, you got me fucked up. Oh my god, and it's following you.
It's hopping along, and she's running away, trying to scare it away. And so she finally tells it, "Go away!" And like the thing stops, and
here we go.
All right, guess I'm going away.
Dun, dun, dun. Sorry.
But what we don't have in the movie is the dog scene with the walking stick. Because in the movie, the Scarecrow gifts her his walking stick.
Oh, that's how the stick comes into it. I got you. Similar to the movie, though, nightfall is kind of descending, and she's like, I don't really, like, I didn't, put that much thought into my plan.
It's cold.
I'm like an old lady. And so she's like, I need to find some place to like warm up. But in the distance is, evil house, evil moving castle. And she's like, well, if he only eats the hearts of young girls, I'm not really young anymore. So maybe I'll be safe. And so she like comes up, and there's something weird about his castle where she like tries to go in the front door, but it's like locked. And so she goes around the corner, and there's like no door there. And she's like, but there should be a door. And then she goes around another corner, and she like can't turn the corner. So it's this weird like 4-dimensional, breaking the fourth wall, whatever. But she finally finds like a secondary door, and she just like sneaks inside, and she's like, well, this works. It's like, girl, this is like breaking and entering.
Every sign was pointing to not go into the castle.
Yep. And she's like, I'm just gonna go in here anyway. And I think immediately we get introduced to Michael, and he's like, who the fuck are you? And she's like, hee hee, I'm here.
I'm your housekeeper.
Because I think, does she meet him, and then she meets Calcifer, and then Michael's like, are you just gonna like stay here? And she's like, I'm just gonna fall asleep. Like, I don't know how Michael was just like okay with her just showing up.
I think she got in, and she meets Calcifer first, maybe.
Yeah.
And Michael's also, this is another like discrepancy, is Michael's a teenager in the book. Like he's like 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
And in the movie, he's
a kid.
Yeah, he's
a
child.
So cute.
Yeah,
adorable. Because that makes more sense, because she's immediately like, she meets Calcifer, and then they immediately like establish a deal where like, I'll help break your curse if you help break my curse. And that's when we get introduced to the whole like Howl Calcifer
relationship. Calcifer is a fire demon, if you are one of the few people listening to this episode who haven't read the book or watched the movie.
Yeah. Which at this point, like,
how?
I don't know. It's such a good movie. Just like watch it. Like I think it's free on Amazon Prime. Like
it's yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Calcifer, fire demon. What is the actual deal?
So Calcifer says, break my curse. I'm bound to this castle. Free me.
Yeah, because he wants to see the world.
Yes, and he's trapped in the castle. And I will break your curse. But Sophie can't tell anyone that she's under a curse. But Calcifer, because he's a fire demon, he like knows that just inherently looking at her.
Yeah. So deal decided. Michael comes in. He's like, okay, like we just have like an adopted old lady now. That's fine. The next morning, Hal comes in, and she's like, oh, he's like way younger than
And she recognizes him as the dude from the market.
She's like, oh my God, wait a second. I just nearly escaped having my heart ripped out. That's fine. And then immediately she like looks around the castle, and she's like, this is fucking disgusting. This is like a frat house. Like, grossness. I'm your new cleaning lady. I have come in. Your house is disgusting. We're going to clean it up. And he's like, I don't need a cleaning lady. And it's like, this house says otherwise.
I love this scene because they preserved this actual scene in the movie as well, like to a T. Because when Howl shows up, Sophie is like forcing Calcifer to cook for her. So she throws a skillet on his head and Calcifer's like, no, I won't do it. And she's like, I'm gonna throw water on you. So she's throwing bacon and eggs in a pan, and then Howl comes over and like shoves Sophie out of the way, and he's like, hand me some bacon. Please don't abuse my fire demon.
She's like, well, sorry, I didn't mean to. It's just he was being a dick. Yeah, because then he's just like, oh yeah, just add a couple extra pats of bacon. I'm hungry too. And she's like, accepted into this family, I guess.
Pretty much. Well, and that's something that they mention in the book quite often is that Howl never commits to anything. Like you'll never hear like, oh, stay forever, or like, hey, I like you. It's like, he'll just treat you like you've always been there.
Because I think Michael says like he just started being his apprentice, and it wasn't until like 6 months later that Howl's like, wait, you're like living in my house? Like, what are we?
And then we find out more. So as Sophie is living in the castle and kind of cleaning everywhere, she
set the spiders in the ceiling. That gets repeated 87,000 times for some reason.
And the spiders make it into the movie too.
Yeah,
it's
they do.
Super cute.
Yeah.
But there's like weird objects. You can tell that Howl is a wizard and he's like selling curses and spells and stuff. But there's a skull that kind of chatters on its own. It like sits in the corner, which is a little creepy.
Yeah, don't like that.
Not at all. But we also learned that there is a magical port door. And there's like, they show this in the movie as well, that if you spin it to a color, the doorknob to a color, then it will open in a different location. And so we have 4 locations?
Yes. One is a black door into some unknown place that Howl is very aggressive about not letting Sophie into. One is into this like port city, Port Haven, I think. And then one is into the capital, Kingsbury. Yep. And then the other one is into, I think, the city that Sophie was in.
The other one is the moving castle, which is near. Yeah.
Yeah. So like actual door in reality. Yes. And so over the next couple days, Sophie starts cleaning the castle, and she realizes it's like smaller than she was expecting from like the outside.
It's like one room in a loft.
Yeah. Nobody has their own bedroom. But she also kind of stumbles across the fact that Howl is disgustingly vain. He will go into the bathroom for 2 hours every morning.
Use all the hot water.
Yeah. And then he appears in a waft of like
jasmine perfume.
Yeah. Flowery steam, and then waltzes off or whatever. And then I think over the next periodically, couple of days, the king sends like a messenger to come knock on the door, and he keeps asking for these like suspicious items, like
7-league boots and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, which are like army boots that let you travel really fast, but he gets like 20,000 pairs, and it's like, that's a little bit suspicious.
So the other thing that Sophie discovers is that Howl isn't like eating souls for real. He's just going out into the cities and making women fall in love with him. And as soon as they fall in love, he leaves them.
Yeah.
That's his whole vibe.
He's like a rake, right? Isn't that what a rake? Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to say a dandy, but I don't think that's right.
So that's kind of the huge character difference between the movie and the book, is that in the movie, Howl is characterized as this like tragic hero type where he's like doesn't want to be a savior, but he's going to anyway. And
he like fights in the war too, or like to stop the fighting.
War is bad. Let me fight against all the sides. But in the book, he's like a reformed rake, kind of. Like he's like, I'm bad, but I really like it.
I'm enjoying myself. Because that's the other thing, is he kind of also has this like Robin Hood-esque air about him. Like he overcharges the government for the boots, and then there's some spell to like make it across to muddy ground or whatever. But then for like poor people who just want a spell to survive, he's like, that'll be 1 penny. And they're like, that seems kind of cheap. And it's also, he spends every single like
on
cent.
clothes. Clothes and makeup.
And Michael and Calcifer have like a little tin like shoved under a rock, as they're like, this is for food and like, necessities that Howl won't spend money on. And so that is their life until, we also kind of like find out from the events that the king's brother, Prince Justin, went into the wastes to find the missing sorcerers.
Yes. So 2 parts. There is the royal wizard, Wizard Suleiman, and he went to the wastes first
to fight the Witch of the Waste.
Yeah, or do something in the waste.
wasn't there some sort of like not repopulation effort, but with plants?
Yeah, he was growing flowers in the waste.
Yeah, just
And then,
casual.
Yeah, and the Witch of the Waste found him and like we think killed him.
Yeah.
And then Prince Justin, who was friends with the royal wizard, went after him to find the wizard, and then he himself got captured or killed by the Witch of the Waste.
Yeah. And then there was some kind of threat to the king's daughter, right?
Yeah.
I think
Princess
that-
Valeria.
Yeah, that like played into like why they were going out there too.
Yeah, I think that's why Solomon went out there.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So 2 missing dudes.
Mhm.
One's a royal wizard. The other is the prince.
Mm-hmm. And Hal is terrified that they're going to make him the new royal sorcerer. And he's
Yes.
like, please tell them no.
And the king wants Howl to go help find these 2 missing guys.
Mm-hmm. And then also the scarecrow keeps like popping up randomly and he's like, hey, let me into the house. And Sophie's like, no, nightmare. Absolutely
Terrified.
not. And she like tells him to like go fuck off. And then the magic kind of like triggers and then he like jumps away.
Yeah.
It's,
That's the main difference between the movie and the book. So the movie is centered on the fact that there is an ongoing war, very World War I-esque, and Howl doesn't want to fight in it, but all of the wizards in the country have been like recruited into the king's army and like they're fighting. It's kind of steampunky
yeah, a little bit
too.
Yeah.
So that's the driver of the movie, but the plot in the book is the 2 missing men and the Witch of the Waste and
Yeah.
Howl.
Yeah. And Sophie's like curse more because I feel like that's almost like a side quest in the movie almost. Like it's not like it's important, but it's
Not the
played off.
most important thing.
Yeah. Because I will say, I think the thematic message in the movie about like kind of like an anti-war sentiment and like, why are we fighting? And like you lose your sense of self when you like join the war effort and you become like a monster. Like I thought that was well done. And I'm like, I think that's a missed opportunity for the book, like a broader message. Like it was well done, like surprising, like out of left field, but like I digged it. Like,
Yeah, I think I would have enjoyed the movie as a more adult-leaning,
yeah.
darker book.
Which is funny because the movie is like an animated,
Yeah.
like for kids almost, but like not. Yeah. I do want like the darker version of Howl's Moving Castle with like maybe like a dash of smut at the end.
So, Master of Crows?
Ooh. But yes.
I had this epiphany like a couple days ago where I was in the car thinking, I really want like a darker romantasy version of Howl's Moving Castle.
Yeah.
And everything about Master of Crows lines up, from the rakish, all-powerful wizard who doesn't want to save anyone and who's kind of gruff and like,
Yeah.
to downtrodden heroine who doesn't want to make much of herself.
Holy shit. Because those are identical.
Yeah.
Wow.
And even some of the magical elements are similar. Like
Yeah.
the whole him saving the world from like the dark evil wizard god thing,
Mm-hmm.
Witch of the Waste.
Wow. I would be interested to know if Grace Draven like had read this book and it like impacted her because whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that epiphany with me and our readers because my brain does
Well,
not
now
feel the same.
I might reread Master of Crows again.
That's like a yearly reread for me. Like, oh my gosh. It gets a little bit cold outside and I'm like, Master of Crows time anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think where it starts to kind of level out plot-wise
Mm-hmm.
is where Sophie discovers that Howl is romancing her sister,
Oh God. Yeah. Letty. The magician Letty.
the magician. So Martha in appearance, but Letty for real.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I
My
think.
brain cannot process.
Can you imagine trying to convey that in an animated
Oh my
movie?
God.
There's no way.
And the fact that the spell, the way it works is you gradually become more of who you look like. Can you fucking imagine?
No.
Like, because at one point they're going to look identical. Absolutely not. Because we also learned that Michael has been romancing
The other sister.
his Letty. Because they both are called Letty at one point, and she's like, which Letty is in trouble from Howl? Like,
yeah.
oh God, girl. It's clear when you're reading it, but I don't know that you could convey it in a way that makes
Well, I love that Sophie loses her mind. She's like, you will not mess with my sister. And so she like cuts up one of his suits.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, when she cuts up his suit and like repairs it, like she repairs like magic into it and makes it an even better suit.
Yep. She's like, you get all of the girls and that's all you do. And they just sparkle at you and you sparkle at them. And then you drop them when you have their heart. And it's like, the suit's like, okay, mission accomplished. It's It's like, that's not what I wanted to happen.
But there's a detail in the book that is fascinating that you don't realize until you're like, oh shit, this author planned this from the beginning. So Michael and Sophie follow Howl secretly one day when he's off courting.
I love this part.
This whole scene. Okay,
God.
so she finds out that Letty the magician is being courted by Howl. So she and Michael sneak off after Howl and like want to track him down to see like how this is going. So they visit like, oh, I'm, Letty's great aunt, Sophie. And so they peer around and they see Howl and Letty sitting in a courtyard, and Letty looks like enamored of Howl, and Howl's on one knee doing his Howl thing.
Jordan just flipped her hair over her shoulder. Oh my God. Wow, yes.
It's very Howl of him, though.
Oh, 100%. Oh.
So that happens, but fast forward, here's a spoiler at the end of the book. We discover that Howl has known Sophie's been cursed the entire time. And when he went to see Letty, he was not courting her. He was trying to ask about Sophie.
He's like, where's your sister? She's cute and I want to know her, but she disappeared. And Letty's like, I don't know where my sister is either. Oh, God.
I love that scene.
You can... So the romance in the book is very subtle. And I don't think this scene was in the movie. But it's like, Sophie has this kind of visceral reaction, but she doesn't understand why she's reacting. Like, she's like upset, and I think she kind of like covers it with being upset that like Letty is gonna lose her heart to this like guy that doesn't love her or whatever. But you can tell that it's like too sharp a feeling, and it has like that kind of undercurrent of jealousy, like unrecognized jealousy. But it's like, it's well done throughout all of these moments that like Hal is running off with some girl, and like Sophie has a very angry response, and I'm like, girl, you jealous?
You got it bad. That's a great description of like a very sharp feeling, because that's exactly what that emotion feels like.
Yeah, because I think just a protective feeling over your sister is less sharp, but there's distinct language. Like, you are left with the like, why are you so upset about this? Like, wait a second.
Poor Sophie.
Oh, gosh.
They all come home, and this is where the book kind of goes off the deep end a little bit.
Yeah.
It's strange. So as Sophie and Michael are cleaning the castle, she discovers this...
Oh, the homework assignment.
The homework assignment, which sounds weird, but that's exactly what it is. So in the background, there's the mysterious black portal. So if you turn the knob to the black thing on the door in the castle, we don't know where it goes. And meanwhile, as all of this is going on, Sophie's still trying to break Calcifer's curse. And so she finds this paper lying around in the castle. And it has...
Michael's trying to do like a curse spell that like he thought Hal left for him.
That's
like,
right, yeah.
This makes no fucking sense.
It's impossible. It's like, catch a falling star and put it in your pocket.
Yeah. Honestly, it would probably read better as like a song.
Yes. And there's like, oh, when the mermaids start screaming, there's
weirdness. And it apparently is like kind of poem-y.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you read it, you'll know exactly what it's like. So they're like, we can't make any of this work. And they go out and try and catch a falling star. And they realize like, oh, the star just wants to die.
It's so depressing.
That was a very depressing part of the book.
Because Michael's like, no, we can rescue you. And the star's like, no, that's wrong. I just want to die. And it's like,
and it like flies off and kills itself.
Yeah.
It's freaking dark. Then Howl comes home and he sees this paper. He's like, oh, fuck.
Oopsie.
He's like, this is not a spell. And then he flips the door handle to the black side. He's like, all right, come with me. We're going on a little adventure. And then they walk out the door and they walk through like this blackness. And then they wind up on a street in Wales. Modern day Wales.
And also he changes their clothes and Michael's immediately like, my pants are too tight.
Their jeans.
And Hal has a jacket on that says like a rugby team or something.
And Sophie's clothes are exactly the same.
That's such a like mean, like insulting little like, you grandma. God.
And then we find out that Howl has multiple identities in this world and in a completely different dimension, like modern day. So they go and visit his sister and her kids. And Howl is
Megan?
like... Yeah, Megan.
Megan and Mary,
and
the daughter. Sorry.
And there's a son, Neil.
Yes.
Maybe something.
I think so. Yeah, Neil. Yeah, Neil is the slightly older child. Mary's the youngest. Megan is the sister who's like very naggy.
Yeah, I didn't like her.
No, but also like why?
There was
But also I kind of get it because Hal is the younger brother and she's the older sister. And Hal walks in and he's like, hey, I have some of Neil's English homework. And she's like, God, you just walk in here. You haven't even done anything. Like everybody questions what you're doing. You don't even have a job. And I'm just storing all of your old shit. Like get it out of my house. And he's like, God, Megan, leave me alone.
And then Sophie and Michael are in the background being like, what the fuck is going on?
I think there's a line that talks about how awkward they feel and they're just trying to disappear. It's like, girl, I feel that.
And the cute little thing here is that Howl is spelled Howell.
Oh.
That's his actual first name.
I love that.
And his last name is Jenkins. So he's Howell Jenkins in Wales, but he's the Wizard Jenkins in Port Haven, and he's Howl, or not Howl, he's Wizard Pendragon.
Yeah,
Kingsbury.
Pendragon.
And then he's Howl to everyone else.
I wish I had multiple identities.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, that'd be fun. But yeah, he gets nagged at and then he goes upstairs, and the way it's described in the book is the kids are staring at this screen that has a bunch of words written on it, and they're very aggressively into it. And then Hal walks over and pulls its insides out. Mm-hmm. But it's they're playing video games on a TV.
Yeah, that's all it is.
And Neil's like, what the fuck, man? And it's where's your homework? And Neil is like, well, I already turned it in because our new English teacher,
Miss Angorian.
Yeah, I did not like her. She's very aggressive. She has a no late policy or whatever. And so I got a 0 and gross. And then Hal's like, well, I need that other piece of it. Does she still have it or whatever? Mm-hmm. Yes, Miss Angorian has it. And then he creates a video game for Neil, but it's
has a moving castle in it.
Yeah, it's based on the real life.
It's a very Inception.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing though when you're it's multiple layers of reality. Yeah, Inception.
I remember being confused as a kid reading this book. I
bet
completely went over my head. There's no.
You're breaking the fourth wall at several points.
And then there's an experience where Howl is driving them in a car. Yeah. And Sophie and Michael are like, what is this strange carriage?
Well, I mean, that's I think the thing that kind of gets missed out on a lot of time travel movies and books is how distraught you would be by just signs and TVs and
stuff
cars,
that we take for granted,
highways,
weird. But they drive to see Miss Angorian, and they meet her, and Hal's like, "Oh, you're pretty,
you're hot."
And then Miss Angorian weirdly says something like, "Hey, I'm looking for my fiance, Ben Sullivan." Huh? Wonder who that could be. And so they spend some time, and Sophie and Michael are like, oh, God, not another one, because they recognize that Howell's going to fall in love with Miss Angorian and leave her behind, at least until he wins.
And Sophie's upset, too, because the last girl that he's now ditching is Letty. And he's like, you got Letty. I saw you guys. You were sitting on one knee, and she, was in love with you, and now you're going to drop her all of a sudden. How, you piece of shit. I'm upset.
But they get the spell back, and then they actually find out the rest of it's a poem by John Donne.
Is he real?
I don't know.
I feel educated. Oh yeah, English poet.
All right.
Ew. Sorry, John Donne. Just jump scare.
Buddy. Oh no, buddy.
He's kind of scary. I don't love that.
Very scary.
Does he not look like Hugh Jackman?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, okay.
That's weird.
Things I could have done without. Yeah, he's a real person, though.
Yeah. So they find that out, and then they go back to the castle, and Sophie's still very pissed. And so when Howl leaves one day, she finally decides to clean his bathroom.
Oh, no.
And so she cleans it, and she gets some stuff mixed up. And so when Howl comes back from one of his adventures courting Miss Angorian, he accidentally turns his hair pink.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. Yeah. And then he proceeds to have a meltdown.
Okay. So in Hal's defense, there are multiple times that if my hair does not work out, I'm just not doing anything for the rest of the day. I'm canceling my plans. I'm staying home. I stress out, especially if it's greasy when you're not expecting it to be greasy. And then it's too late to wash your hair. And then you're late for the, oh my God, girl. Hal, I feel you. This was one of those that I'm no, he's in the right.
But not just meltdown. He literally melts into green slime, and slime covers the walls, and he's like, my life is over.
I'm no longer beautiful. What does he say in the movie? It's life's not worth living if I'm not beautiful.
Yeah. But set in Christian Bale's voice.
Oh God. Oh, Lord.
But that's what I was really happy about that they preserved in the movie is that they kept the green slime.
Yeah. I just didn't realize when I watched the movie and then I heard that it was a book, I'm like, oh, that's just a movieism. They like added that in. So imagine my confusion when, yes, green slime happens in the book too. Crazy.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah.
These are going to be some longer episodes because there's all of these details, which tells you how well written and structured the story is. But that's kind of where we are at.
Yes, green slime.
Green slime. Howl's cursed with these impossible things. Calcifer's cursed. There's the Witch of the Waste.
Sophie's cursed.
Everybody's cursed. Prince Justin is missing. Wizard Suleiman is missing. There's a threat to the king's daughter.
Miss Angorian's a bitch. That felt mean, but she is.
She is. There's a lot.
Yeah.
And magical clothing and hats that Sophie's making on a whim.
Yeah.
That's Howl's Moving Castle.
Part 1.
From our shelf to yours.
We'll see you on the next page. Hi, readers. If you'd like to help us pick our next book, send us a message on Instagram.
Or if you'd like to just listen, we post new episodes every Monday and Wednesday on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. Thanks for listening.
Bussin'.